All right, Mr. Gorham, I think I want to start with you. I want you to do a commercial for me first. Is that okay?
Yep.
So on campus at the University of Illinois, where I work, we have something called Research Park. And a couple of places have come out of this facility. Granular is one of them. Agrable, which maybe a lot of you are familiar with, is another one. How important is it that there are startup places in the Midwest that are attached to universities? And what is it about, again, this is a commercial, relatively speaking, but what is it about the University of Illinois and Research Park that provides the underpinnings that make startup companies in the ag space work?
Yeah. So I'd say historically, Silicon Valley has been the place to hire talented software engineers. That is expanding beyond outside of Silicon Valley. It's a trend now where you have a bunch of startups and VC firms investing in companies in popular cities. So University of Illinois helps that. It is the #1 school for engineering. And so we are able to often hire people that are top talented software engineers, but also grew up in the Midwest. So maybe they didn't grow up on a farm per se, but they have been surrounded by farming and they have a connection to agriculture. And for us, we're building farm management software along with a whole host of other tools. And so the unicorn type person that we hire for is somebody that really knows how to build software and has a connection to agriculture.
So I think maybe I'd like whoever wants to answer this question, but all of these folks have kids probably that are college age that they know. What should they pursue if they want a career in agriculture, but they're not going to farm? What kind of activities should they pursue? So you said University of Illinois, didn't say the College of Agriculture or College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences, which is where I work. You said engineers. You needed software engineers. What does everybody else, so what are you missing that you need a supply of? And I'm kind of hunting down what are the best careers to look forward to. Anybody want to take that up? Sure.
As a resident young person, maybe. I think, and also speaking as an engineer, I think it's important actually to have kind of a diversity of folks coming into the space increasingly as we're seeing, automation. We talked a lot of, the drones are taking over. As we see a lot, there is definitely a need and opportunity for engineers to build product, but more and more we're moving towards a creative economy where you really need to be able to creatively put the pieces together, and that's actually the kind of thinker increasingly we need in this space. So, I would say learn to learn. That's what really, learn to learn and learn to work. That's all that really matters. I mean, yeah, engineering, you'll get a good job. But if you work hard, you'll also get a good job.
What does Tractor Soda do?
We have an organic beverage company. We
Yeah.
we have an organic beverage company. That's one of our companies. We're an added value, farmer, try to figure out how to grow things to make money at it. Going to your education thing, I have 11 kids. Yes, they're all mine. One and we figured out what caused that. Now we have 2 grandkids too. But I think a lot about education for my kids. I look back at, great grandpa lived in Iowa. He didn't teach grandpa to be a corn and soybean farmer. He taught him how to raise hogs. He couldn't make any money at hogs, so he became a mechanic at Swift, right? And then eventually he moved out to California and things changed. And so I look at that, I think about it. What didn't grandpa do to teach us, the next generation? And so I want you guys, I'm going to push you a little bit to think a little bit differently than how we set it up. A lot of the time we think about how we're going to make it to the next year. We want to put our kids in the right college. Sometimes we're putting them in the wrong thing. If we go to all electric cars and you teach your kid to be a diesel mechanic, you might be in trouble, right? So there are going to be things that you need to work on, think about what's going to be around 5 years from now. Like you talked about that scooter deal yesterday. Like, who in the heck would think you're going to be able to get a scooter off the side of the road and keep on cruising with it? Like, some things just happen so quickly. Half of your kids will have jobs that don't exist today. That's the reality. There are schools that don't even know what to teach and how to teach. Your kids might be growing, might be manufacturing something in the hemp industry, not in the corn industry, and you might be growing 30% hemp and not corn. So there are things that are going to be different. So think a little bit creatively, think added value. Also think about if petroleum goes away or shrinks, how does that affect your industry? Is it going to be that now you're sitting on a hemp-based couch? Are you wearing blue jeans that are genetically edited with a blue gene that came from a crop that you grew that didn't have to be dyed? So those are the things to think about. What are your kids really going to be going to school for? It's probably not the same stuff you went to school for. And as an added value guy, I've always tried to figure out how do we decommoditize something to make more money at it. And now we're in 48 states and go to 5 countries and 8 in one of our companies. We have several companies. Teach your kids to be entrepreneurs, to hustle, and not to worry so much about competing with the same thing, with the same guy, but think a little bit more extreme without going belly up. That's kind of on the education side.
I want to interject. The reason I asked Travis to be up here is he came to my office. We've met a couple of times. Travis, he's dealt with Whole Foods. He deals directly with the Amazon's, Whole Foods. He's decommoditized his operation in several different ways. Like he says, has several different businesses, had cattle operations, made some shifts and changes to go direct to Whole Foods and some of the other places, and has some of those inroads laid. And just, I call, he's done a lot of the heavy lifting and carved a path. So, if you guys get a chance and you can pick his brain outside of here, I think there's some, and we'll get into it as we talk here a little bit, but I think you'll really be intrigued by some of the stories and things that he could add value to where you guys may be focused. So,
can we, and I don't know who wants to take this, can we decommoditize number 2 yellow corn? Anybody?
What it comes down to is all you guys are really in the business of creating fat, oils, proteins, cellulose. So how do you take that corn and make it with more of that in there? It's like in the dairy industry, we get paid on components now, right? So yeah, you can get better at it, and that's part of the decommoditizing. Like, how are you going to be more competitive? Well, it's more components per acre.
Anybody else think it's possible?
It'll be swapped out with something else. I mean, if you look at things like synthetic biology, we're using other components to get there. So I think the inputs will change, and yeah.
I think we can.
Well, let me say, we're actually doing it, so yes.
Yes. Yeah. Tell me about Cargill's plans and what you do. You have a unique title, Digital Assets, or what's the title again?
It's Digital Economy Strategy Lead.
Yeah, so why that title, and what do you do for Cargill?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Cargill is recently building up skills into this the digital economy space, because with all the changes that we are perceiving, which is changing the sector, changing the industry, which will fundamentally, completely shift the way that we have the relation with food and the way that we transact today. So into the space that we see in the future, that a company is investing in capabilities and putting as a focus to invest as well in what is innovation in technology in the digital world, to create more products, to create more services, where we can be better, we can be more efficient for the farmers, and we can be different.
So you, Cargill, a company that they all think of as an originator, are want to create products and service. What's on the list? What kind of products and services?
From anything ranging for the things that for example, sorry?
What was the first one? I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
Sorry, anything that, it's the products, they are coming from the digital world, are anything that can make the life of a farmer easier and simple, and also reduce the costs from digital platforms, from apps. Also, we are testing on with products related to artificial intelligence, where we can provide more data, more analytics services in the sense to help the value chain. As we announced, we are also, together with other companies, testing on blockchain as well. how we can use this technology. So it's a little bit of everything that in this space also includes robotics, analytics. So that makes the sector and creates more value within the chain.
Let me repeat that just so I think I've got it right. So you're looking at ways to make their life simpler through services, sometimes applications that they might be using in the field, and you're wanting to collect data in the process. So on the other end, the end users.
Yeah, it's not only collect data, it's we providing data, right? That is what is all the economy when you go to the digital world today, that you have a very strong trend on shared economy, and also most of these products, they are providing more transparency. And that's the whole objective for some of these digital products to be explored is if you provide more data, more transparency, people, they have a better sounded, informed decisions and makes the market more efficient.
So I want to transition to Granular real quick. Granular was bought by who?
Corteva. Dow DuPont at the time.
Yeah, Corteva and DuPont. Agrible was just purchased as well by Nutrien. Some of you will know who that is, others won't. They have 900 fertilizer outlets across the United States, so local dealers. And they bought them for $63 million. Both came out of the research park. What kind of services does Granular, in this case, what kind of services does Granular provide?
Yeah, we have 3 different products. One is business management software, so helps farmers run the business, replace your spreadsheets, pen and paper. We have an agronomy software focused on writing variable rate prescriptions and satellite imagery. And then we have a farmland real estate software. It's essentially the Zillow for farmland.
Called Acre Value.
Called Acre Value.
Yeah. Have you done this? Anybody used Acre Value? Right? Go to Acre Value. You want to know what your farm is worth? You know, you can go to Zillow and look up what your neighbor's house is worth online. You can go to Acre Value and look up what your farm is worth, and it's pretty darn good. How does climate fit into this space?
Yeah, so climate at its heart is a data science company, and the whole mission and premise of the company is that through data science, we can make better decisions. Ultimately, what we want to do is make the best decision at the right time. And by collecting data, analyzing it, creating machine learned models, iterating, things like that, we're able to help farmers, help dealers, retailers, et cetera, make the best decision possible with the data that we have at the right time.
How does your company, what's your company do, and how does it fit in these kinds of spaces as well? Take the mic.
Sure. So I work with the Yield Lab, and we're a group of early stage venture capital funds. Sorry I was a minute late, Kevin. We've got funds now in Singapore, Argentina, and Ireland, and St. Louis, Missouri. That's where we started out. And so we invest in early stage agriculture technology companies, and we run them through a pretty hands-on, so they're early stage, right, baby companies, but we run them through a pretty hands-on mentorship kind of program where we really focus on actually connecting them with kind of folks like you guys. It's interesting in this kind of venture capital space. There's an increasing interest in ag tech, but there's a lot of capital that doesn't necessarily understand the space very well. So we're a group of mostly farmer agribusiness, a couple of farmers involved, and we work very closely with the companies to ensure that they're actually adding value to agriculture as opposed to just a cool buzzwordy thing.
Have you been at it long enough that you have a sense of what works and what might that be?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, it varies greatly, right? When we say ag tech, we're looking at anything that touches ag and food systems. But one of the things that I'm really thinking about that I think is really important, and I've noticed that the companies that are good at this are the ones who continue to survive and do well, and I also think that this is a pain point in ag tech generally, is the ability to communicate. So a lot of these technologies they're doable. Like there's very clear opportunities. As an engineer, I can see how we can assemble a team to build for a solution, But one of the really challenging components is making sure that you can communicate with the necessary stakeholders. So your customers, for one, but then your collaborators. So you need to be able to communicate with the different corporate strategics in the space in order to succeed. And you need to be able to communicate with the investors, and that's a whole nother language. So you have to be able to speak all these different languages, and the companies that are good at that are the ones that you're really hearing about and you know their names. But those that aren't so good at that tend to fail for reasons that aren't necessarily due to not because it's a bad idea, just because it's really difficult to commercialize something if you're not thinking about where it fits in whoever you need to talk to's space, right? So, but that's a high-level thing I'm thinking about now.
Carter Williams, what does iSelect Fund do? What's the business model, and what do you do?
The core business model is we invest in startups and help them grow and then exit them like Agrible. So we're an investor in Agrible, and we help them grow. So we make money when those companies get sold, but the principle behind how we do it is very focused on, one, understanding what might change in the market. So it's how might synthetic biology change, how might the industries change, and then investing in the 20 companies that might succeed in that space, and 3 or 4 out of those 20 will actually succeed, and working with those companies to deal with the challenge of getting customers and growing. So we sort of are, a lot of our business is based on optionality. So yesterday I postulated a little bit of, hey, we saw a trend go through with AT&T in the past, and so how does that inform us about how the market might emerge? And is it going to be Indigo? Is Bunge going to change lanes and impress the market and change things? Is Cargill digital strategy going to wipe out granular? And so we look across that horizon and place bets in about 4 or 5 different areas that cover us against all those eventualities.
Is Cargill's digital strategy going to wipe out granular? Thank you very much. You're supposed to laugh at that. They're all up on stage.
Yeah, I got a little at the bar last night. I guess there was a little bit of friction. We're observers as we invest. Sometimes people say, "What's your forecast?" I don't have a forecast.
All right.
So these are all things that might happen if we look at the past in terms of the disruptions we've seen, and so we prepare for all those eventualities and see if there's an arbitrage that we can invest in.
Right. So for granular, climate, and Cargill, and maybe the rest of you, but I'm not quite certain. Well, down here on the end with Tractor Soda too, but you're in a different space. For number 2 yellow corn, for regular old soybeans, USDA commodities. How do you work with producers, but how do you run that all the way through the supply chain to the end user? And do you think that's a space that makes a difference for your companies?
It's a good question. First, I'd like to add some more color on what products will succeed or what work.
Oh, sure.
Your question earlier. So a lot of this conference has been discussing decompressing commodity prices and increasing or stagnant land and input prices. And so if this sort of situation is going to continue, how are farmers going to survive? And one of the biggest things is, there's a couple, and we've already discussed it, decommoditizing, finding your competitive advantage, but also farmers are looking for ways to be more productive, like do more with less. And so in terms of the products that I think are going to succeed, we are seeing things like, for example, doing more with less labor, and how is robotics going to play a role in that? And John Deere, for example, is investing a lot in automated tractors, for example. Another one is in software and helping folks communicate and make decisions using the information that they have and taking it out of what's in their head or in a file cabinet to make decisions. So we're constantly thinking about different things to make you more productive. You have companies, I won't name them, but that are trying to be like the Amazon of inputs, to drive down the cost of inputs. And so as farmers, they're all looking for ways to be more productive, cut costs right now in the sort of environment that we're in, ultimately.
I got a few. That's all good. I feel like that was a lot of fluff for about 20 minutes. I think we got to cut to more meat. I want to hear what the consumer is doing. I mean, Travis and I talked. Explain to them where we see the grocery store going, where we see the consumer changing, so then they can make changes or understand better on what you've dealt with and experienced and see firsthand. So fire me off, where we see the grocery store going.
It's right there. That's next.
This is going to be interesting. So you look at, first of all, show of hands, how many people are on Amazon Prime? Most of you, right? I don't personally because my wife does all that stuff and I don't deal with it, but that's a big deal, right? So about 20% of all the groceries that are bought in this country are through Amazon, and but not all of them. So there's something that's going to be changing with the grocery industry because of that. And then we'll talk about C-stores a little bit too, but convenience stores. But so right now what's going to happen over the next 5 years is the average grocery store in the United States is about 35,000 square foot. It's going to go down to about 7 to 10. The reason is the middle of the store, people don't shop there anymore. You get your diapers, your razors, everything else is subscription based, and it's going to be delivered to your house. You're not going to be going in there. Wife's not going to say, get me some diapers on the way back. I've been in the diaper industry a long time. I have 11 kids, right? My wife has not asked me to go get diapers in 2 years. Pretty amazing, right? They get delivered to our door. I don't have to think about it. Milk's a different ballgame. We had a milkman back in the day, 50s, right? But you can't get milk through Amazon. I mean, maybe you can, but it's probably gonna be funky and it's expensive. Like there's certain things that just don't make sense to get through Amazon. So when you go into a grocery store, you go into the produce section. You got your produce. Hopefully it's good. Then you got your dairy, you got your meat, you got your baked goods, and then you pay and you leave. That's basically what's going to be left in the grocery store. Grocery store is changing. Everything in the middle, from spices to dry goods, either we don't eat them because it's bad for us anymore, or we just don't go to it. If you go through pretty much any grocery store in the country at 10 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you can run a bowling ball through the middle of that store. There's a lot of wasted space in that grocery industry, and there's about to be a retail apocalypse that's going into that deal.
And as you and I talk, we believe that it's going to fragment out more, and you're going to see individual butcher shops, which you're seeing pop up again.
Yep.
You're going to see individual bakery stores, like we're seeing
100%.
pop up again.
Yep.
And we believe that's going to be some opportunities
For sure.
some type of direct.
So what's happening with that deal is we tried to decommoditize it. We were the first guys to organic beef, had a retail shop in San Francisco. Talk about interesting. You'll learn a few things with that. And do it. It's hard, but it's going to be done. Then you have basically since 2000 when we did that, or 2002, now you can get organic beef in pretty much every store in the country, organic milk in every store in the country, and 30% of you guys buy something organic every time you shop, right? So it's available from Costco to Sam's Club, it's everywhere. But what's happening is now we've got like Whole Foods where you've got a central buying area because it's Amazon, and it's no longer an experience, it's more like you go there to get your Amazon stuff and you pick up some coffee or whatever. So those things are changing to where it used to be a regional play where you might be a small dairy farmer in Wisconsin making some crazy cheese and everybody loves it at the farmer's market, and now you're into 20 Whole Foods and that's as big as you want to be. Well, that's over. You're not going to be in Whole Foods necessarily as a specialty niche company, but you might have an artisan butcher shop, and if you go back 35 years ago, you go to a small town Minnesota, you had a butcher, a baker, not the candlestick maker, but you get the idea, right? So it was all individual things. Walmart and Target kind of gobbled up a lot of that industry, but it's coming back to that. So there's going to be a specialty niche. You're going to be doing something that's interesting and spectacular, along with still doing some commodity stuff too, most likely, or your kids will be. And then there's going to be like the Costco's are still going to be around, but the big stores are going to go away. Kroger's going to have a hard time.
You guys on the panel, you seeing similar at Cargill? Connie?
I have something to add on that, because agree with what he said, but there is also another trend coming from the groceries and consumers that has a direct impact in the future for farmers. If you think it's the question about sustainability and traceability around the practices, right? Because right now, more and more, and that's end consumers, they want to know what they are eating. And they want to know not only if what they are eating is good, but also who produced that. If it was produced with good sustainable practice in labor, environment, and also all the questions that we also discuss in the sector around also the crop chemicals being utilized in the space, right? Right now, technology and everything that comes to the point of the data science and also things like blockchain, which we are seeing very interesting user cases where that can be traced back to the farmer. And that, in my perspective, will unlock a form for farmers to get premiums out of that as well.
Right. Hey, Todd.
Boom.
I wanted Todd to tell people. Todd just did a big, extensive study, and he's been doing some work on blockchain, and he was going to have McDonald's in, and he said something to me earlier, at the beginning of the conference, we were talking.
So all this fluff, I was building to something here.
Okay.
You got there before
I ran
did.
out of time yesterday, so I'm like, we better get to the meat of this stuff.
Yeah. So
Tell
I
them about
was
McDonald's.
building the fluff back into this side of it, and it comes back to blockchain. It comes back to the data that they're pulling and decommoditizing. Because the organic thing's one thing, but corn and soybeans. I'm getting to McDonald's.
Talking about McDonald's, yeah.
Yeah.
Just the state change.
So think about McDonald's. McDonald's, and I had last week a conference. I had McDonald's, was supposed to have McDonald's, though she didn't show up because her daughter had a gallbladder surgery. But I've seen the presentation by them. McDonald's and Anheuser-Busch were in. Anheuser-Busch is a unique function because they're integrated all the way back to the farmer. They don't need very many barley and rice farmers, like 1,000 total. They used 200 barley farmers last year. For 98% of the beer that is brewed in the United States and consumed. 200 farmers. Commodity farmers, barley farmers. McDonald's is a big place. How many beef producers? 10% of beef produced in the United States consumed by one company. When they make a decision, it makes a difference. So here's what those two companies are doing, or have been doing. The people that I was having in both have "and sustainability" on the back of their titles, and they were both vice presidents or senior directors of procurement. So they're the ones that are making decisions, right? And they're "and sustainability." In the case of Anheuser-Busch, one of their goals is financial sustainability of the farmer, because they're scared that they have so few farmers that they have to deal with that they're going to lose them, and that would be a problem. McDonald's, on the other hand, is saying, we want from the consumer side, to be able to tell them that our beef was fed with grain with a characteristic, but not non-GMO necessarily, not organic necessarily, not a characteristic that's defined by the kernel or number 2 yellow corn, but a production characteristic. So a sustainable practice. So if you're a no-tiller, if you're a conservation tillage person, or if you just have setbacks on your along the streams and drainage areas, or maybe it's just rain-fed rather than on center pivot, those sorts of things. And I think that's where Granular and Climate and some of the other organizations, Cargill's, look at blockchains along with ADM, Louis Dreyfus, and the ABCDs are thinking that they might be able to find value to pass all the way to the end user, but that decommoditizes potentially, and they want to know whether they can get a premium out of it, corn and soybeans. Is that possible, and is that where you think we're headed?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
It's about
Good.
it's about traceability.
Premiums. It's about premium.
Yeah.
You got to pay them, or they're not going to do it.
Right.
Right.
And at the farm level today, many farmers aren't tracking their practices to the extent of detail that ultimately a McDonald's would want to track. And so the farmers that are tracking this stuff really well, they can prove to them that they are following these sustainable practices and are receiving premiums for that. That'll become more and more popular as the consumers demand it.
Travis, are those hoops you had to jump through for Whole Foods and Amazon and?
Oh man, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through. So we were trying to do something a little bit awkward and difficult back in 2000. We would butcher the beef, and then on the package it would have the exact ear tag number from that animal. Every one of you guys are going to be doing that in the future. Milk's going to be like that. There's a new milking machine that milks the cow robotically, packages it, bottles it, and on that bottle it says exactly what cow it came from. That's coming. It's not now, might be 10 years from now, but it's on its way. And there will be, going back to your deal, it's not about the niche stuff being the weird, like everybody wants to know where it comes from. We're way past that. They want to know where everything comes from. Every one of you farmers, like, it kind of freaks you out to think about it, but they want to know where it comes from. It comes from your farm and what acre it comes from. And there's enough technology where they can prove it. And if you don't do it, then you're going to have to get out of the way, because the guy that can prove it's going to make more money. That's what it comes down to.
Carter, Connie?
Yeah. The consumer is driving this entire conversation. In the past, nobody's listened to them or limited. The more the consumer's voice comes forward, the more we're going to see this. So there's one Travis.
1, 2, 3.
If there are 20,000 Travises coming out of the agriculture community who are innovating, they're going to completely change the system. And to some degree, you guys all right. This is a little bit of my conversation yesterday. Some of you will make the decision to be more like Travis in terms of verticalization, in terms of adopting these practices. And if you hit critical mass, we will decommoditize.
I think just to step back to the kind of consumer and the end of the grocery store, I think we have to remember that to get people into stores now, and this is why we're going to go towards, again, back to kind of the butcher shop, it's experiential. When it comes down to it, it's all about, a story. And like, I think generally, I used to think that communication is just fluffy stuff, but actually, it's completely the heart of the matter. I mean, that's why we have this GMO adoption problem. We can't have that problem with all the other new technologies we're bringing in. And consumers want to be told a story that they like. And they want to go into a store and they want to have a positive interaction. Otherwise, they're going to order it on Amazon or something else. So I used to work as a pastry chef at a really high-end restaurant. And it's really interesting because if you go to a really high-end restaurant now, you notice, or even not, all of the menus are really farm-forward, farm-driven, and to the point that it can be quite deceptive in a lot of these stories. So I think the opportunity, and I want to kind of go back to the Cargill blockchain thing in a second, but there's a huge opportunity to utilize these traceability techniques and tools to tell that story. But if we don't do it right, it further kind of isolates this one type of consumer who is really, really focused on local, sustainable, blah, 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 right? We risk isolation. So one example is the Turkey kind of blockchain solution that has been in place now for 2 years. I don't know if any of y'all have been reading about this, because Thanksgiving, you talk about turkeys, right? So past couple of weeks, there's been a couple of interesting articles on, is this blockchain solution actually providing consumer traceability? And that's what consumers are reading. And right now, they're saying, wait, this is just another big corporate thing that is bad. And that's not necessarily true, but it's really, really important that we somehow figure out how to position ourselves and communicate that we need to figure out what exactly people want to hear, and we're not doing a good enough job of that.
Yeah, and I'll give you guys an example. My kids started shopping at Whole Foods, and we'd never shopped at Whole Foods or anything. They'd said prices had really started to come down once Amazon had bought them and made some changes. So they built a new one down here in Kansas City. I had to drive my wife 30 miles last week to go to the grocery store because now she just loves Whole Foods and the experience of it. And I don't even know. So I go with her there, and the place is packed. I mean packed, jam-packed. And you go over to the meat section, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And the meat is rated. It had meat ratings. Like, I don't want to be facetious, but I'm just saying, you just want this normal, poor old, crippled, caged up bird? That's rating 1. Number 2, this little bird here, he got to play for about 5 minutes. This bird got to play all day with his friends and have good food. And this bird here, he just got to play his entire life and run around be happy, and it's like it guilts you into. You're like, shit, I don't want the number one. I mean, I probably better go with this higher priced meat over there. I'm sitting there saying to my wife, I'm like, this is a crazy. I mean, this is nuts. I mean, it's just kind of pushing these people into it. And that's where the premiums are going to be at. I'm just seeing it play out, and I'm watching all these people and hearing them talk and buying the nuts and berries and all this crazy, the organic stuff. And I'm like, wow. I mean, they are really going to market and push it that way with that kind of traceability. Oh, your bird was in a little bitty tight cage. You sure you want to buy that one? So.
Kevin, it's Catholic guilt at the grocery store. I'm Catholic.
Exactly. You're right. That's what it felt like.
I've got 3 questions out here in the audience. Can we just head in there? There we go.
Hey, Kevin, I would like someone to define for me the word sustainability. I have a son that's a sophomore at the University of Illinois majoring in ag, and he tells me that his instructors do not agree on the definition. I think if you want to talk about fluff, that's a good place to start.
I am 100% in agreement with that question.
Has not been defined yet. Anybody
Go to
got
you
a good
guys.
definition?
So I spent about, when I first started at the Yield Lab, I spent about a year trying to define, we consider ourselves impact investors, so we do the triple bottom line thing. And I tried to define impact for ag, and I looked at all of what's out there, and there's no set standardization. And I'm an engineer, so I like numbers. I want things to be real. And there's nothing there. There's no clear way to compare apples and oranges. So I think sustainability, number one, has to be economically sustainable. And it's only economically sustainable if you can continue to input the necessary inputs. So that's where you start to get into the environmental sustainability standpoint. It really depends what factors you want to keep. Sustain means keep things going, right? So it matters what things you want to keep going. And then you have to prioritize, because do we want to prioritize feeding people, or do we want to prioritize, clean water? Can we prioritize both? There's probably some optimization equation there. But you're right, sustainability is just
I think sustainability is sort of being used as in the broader context is being used in to differentiate products, but it really comes down to the features. I think a better way to think about it is what inputs went in it. Are they the inputs I wanted it to go into it? How were, the chicken, how did they live? I think we're going to just see that list of features expands, and as I say, the catch-all is sustainability in terms of marketing, but it's going to end up being a combination of traceability and explanation of features, and then consumers are going to buy based on the label for what they were. I think you were saying that, if it's fresh local, actually I think fresh local is probably a better variant of the description now. I think we're going to see people, if you have good day-old lettuce, it's really, really good.
So Kevin, I asked this question last week, and I think personally the end user, meaning whoever the company is, going to define sustainability. Anheuser-Busch defined it this way. Actually, he wrote it down for me because he was there last week. So they do smart barley, which is an agrible product. And they want sustainability to be 100% direct from the farm, so they're purchasing direct. They're going around the ABCDs. They have for a long time, but they only have to do barley. I think that's going to happen more often, potentially, with commodities. They want water stewardship. They want to purchase themselves from 100% renewable, so all of their products and packaging and all of that sort of thing. And then they want to be able to reuse everything that they package, and that's how they define sustainability. So and my guess is that end user, the company, will be defining sustainability as much as anything, based on what they think their consumer wants.
Like when I go on Amazon and I say I want something, I want to buy this thing, I want to do it between $100 and $200, I want to have 4 stars, I want it to have 1 terabyte, it's just going to be this list along the side. And you're going to make a decision. And sometimes Amazon knows ahead of time. Amazon probably already knows when I'm going to buy at Whole Foods this weekend. I wish they'd tell me. Maybe I wish they'd tell me, but they already know. So, but it's going to be, I think it's just going to expose itself more like that. It's going to just, you're going to make the choices based on how you want. And as a result, you're going to pay 10 cents more or 20 cents more or 30 cents more, whatever your reservation price is. And what that also means is, as a producer, if you see that you can produce to that better, you're going to get more margin.
My question is that it all sounds great, and for the higher end producer and people on the East Coast and the West Coast, that's great. But for somebody who's got 11 kids, I'm not going to Whole Foods. I'm going to go to Aldi, and I'm going to bag it myself. I'm going to buy the cheapest damn thing I can find because I don't make millions of dollars. So I think there's still going to be a need for commodity because you're not going to feed a planet of 9 billion people with everybody raising 10 chickens in their yard.
Now I agree with that in an extent. And that's the question that the Fed asked when we were over at the Fed meeting the last 2 years. I said that before. They want to know, will the millennials, who are basically age 22 to 38 right now, 22 to 38, will they continue to pay up for high priced once they have kids, once they have car payments, once they're out of mom and dad's basement? Will they continue to pay up? And that's the big question. And I'm telling you, my dad will say, no way. They'll just go to Hardee's. They'll just go, okay, now I'm letting you know, I think my dad's wrong. I think their buying's changed completely. You look at what they've cut out. Harley Davidson's laying people off. They're not buying motorcycles. They're not buying high-end furniture. They're not buying high-dollar jewelry. So you can think they may keep going to Aldi, and Aldi's people will just be buying cheap groceries. Be careful. Be careful on that one. They're not buying first-time homes like you or I did. The kids don't want to live in a house like I had to start in. They're going to live in a house like about my third house maybe. They're going to wait and live under Poppy's wing until they can go buy a nice house. I see how this is playing out. I mean, or somewhere where I'm subsidizing some part of their play. And I'm telling you, we're seeing that across the board. And that's the question the Fed is asking every time we've been in the meeting. What's going to happen? There's no way these kids are going to keep paying this for Starbucks, Chipotle, all this. I think they are. I really do. I think they're going to cut their budget in other areas that we didn't or our parents didn't. It's all about this experience stuff. Hey, get a Snapchat, Facebook, whatever all of it is. Let me get a snap of this experience I'm having. They'd just as soon travel.
So if part of the commodity market moves to the non-commodity market, the commodity market's going to get better price because 10% have moved over. So that's one part. That's maybe the Fed's concern. The second thing is the flip the switch moment that I'm looking for is when will somebody stop buying refined sugar-based products and switch to protein-based products? So if the market shifts, think about this. If all of a sudden people say, I'm not going to take refined sugars and have that carbs in my diet, and instead I'm going to have a much more protein-deep diet, and we see a major shift, then I don't know how I haven't seen anybody do the studies, and this is what we're looking for, is if that shift of taste is going to change, if that could happen, that Mikey likes it, advertising doesn't do the job, and all of a sudden say, I'm going to pay more for lettuce, and I'm going to change my diet from eating potato chips to eating fresh lettuce because it just tastes better. If that flip the switch moment happens, you'll quickly move out of the millennials, and the rest of you will eat that way. And that will change. That may very well change your economics a lot. Then you're going to be selling ethanol and ethanol.
Okay. Real quick. My question is, I'm from New York City, or I live in New York City. My favorite thing to do is to go to Whole Foods on a Sunday afternoon. You talk about a competitive sport. It's really something else. It's like mini Olympics 101. My question is just around the amount of E. coli scares we've seen in the last couple of weeks, to the point where, even I as a regular consumer, I don't know what I can eat safely and can't eat safely anymore. So I'm curious to hear from you guys, do you think that accelerates this whole blockchain traceability, or does it scare consumers enough that they take a step back and say, well, maybe I care more about safety than I do about organic or sustainable or anything else. Could all of these scares change consumer behavior?
For sure. I mean, so yeah, definitely. It clearly already is, right? I think the romaine leafy greens industry response is to trace each batch and label now on romaine. They have to say where it came from, so that instead of saying, okay, just don't eat any romaine, we can just say, okay, the romaine that was harvested in this region at this point in time, we're going to pull from the shelves, right? That makes for a much easier product recall, just like processed goods already do. So that's step one that I think will probably spread to everything to some degree, right? And this is accelerating that. On our end, we're going to make an investment for sure on almost, nothing is ever for sure. But we're very interested in making investments in companies that are able to do better, to better diagnose all these different kind of contaminations, because testing on site is challenging still. And if you can have some kind of brand, again, it's this bridge to the consumer where you can guarantee that this is safe because this technology enabled that.
There's also a packaging dynamic. Being in meat and dairy and produce and all that, it's kind of fun. Like everybody says, oh, you're like a scientist or an engineer. Like, no, I'm a farmer. I just want to get a safe product to the end user. How do you do that? A lot of these guys are investing in different companies that will change that. You will be able to know for sure that you're not going to have E. coli issues in the next 5 years. At the end user, there's companies that, as everything comes in, they're testing it to make sure the bacteria is not there. We personally process our stuff aseptically so that we can get it to last for a long time, but also so the bacteria doesn't grow. And then there's other things that are happening that you guys haven't seen yet, like ozonated trucks. There will be semi-trucks that are ozonated, and it'll kill any E. coli that's in there on the way to where you're getting it. So it'll be harvested. It'll be ozonated on the way there, and then it'll come out and it'll last longer, and it'll also it won't have the bacteria issues that you have now. There's technologies coming that you won't have to worry about your food in the 5 years from now.
I think Travis brings up a good point on the labeling. I think I told some of you folks I was at a meeting with one of the ConAgra execs sitting there, and I said, how things going? And they said, man, this was a year ago. They said, it's hell right now. We got to pull everything and relabel a lot of stuff. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we had some people they kind of did a little experiment. They put non-GMO on their cranberry juices. And they said, they had a spike in sales. It was astronomical. I mean, it just went, and they're like, crazy. There's no such thing as a GMO cranberry. We just put non-GMO on the label. So now we got to go and pull everything, and we're relabeling everything to non-GMO. So that could get that labeling, and so I'm telling, they're definitely pushing the consumers in that way via labeling or whatever else.
Gluten-free, non-GMO. Pick your label of the day. How does blockchain? I'm kind of interested in how's blockchain work in this process. Can you track things? Is that the purpose eventually, to track characteristics other than, I know it's for execution and to get rid of paperwork in large part, but is it going to be used for something else?
No, yeah. There's a point in the case of there is a point in the case of blockchain that blockchain is new, and blockchain, any design, and taking to her point in the beginning that she said that we must be careful when we create the technology, especially blockchain, to not isolate. And in the case of the data that is provided, if you don't guarantee, and there is the connection between the physical process with the digital world, right? Because what guarantees that what the data that you're providing the blockchain and to your customers is accurate, right? That's the challenge of this process, because blockchain have this, if you put garbage in, will be garbage out, right? And that's one of the biggest challenge that comes to the point that you have to be very careful to the implementation and super diligent and compliant when the data that you are feeding to the system to guarantee. So not all data perhaps is continuously to be processed and be shared through blockchain. But I guess we are coming towards that, and I do believe that this is the future.
So last week we talked about potential solutions to this. So Agrible is a potential solution. Granular is a potential solution. The data collection part of it, blockchain, is a potential solution. Land O'Lakes has one that everybody else hates because they want to push it as an open source one that's a potential solution. Syngenta has one called AgriEdge. Some of you probably use that. But they're all proprietary, relatively speaking, through the end process. And I don't know how well that works and how well that will end up providing consumers, companies, producers a satisfactory end use. So there are a couple of farmers in central Illinois and University of Illinois Extension, but this just seems like it works. Are thinking, if you're looking for sustainable characteristics and it's on commodities, and here's the point, I think, if you're going to get a premium out of this, you have to get it today, because you don't want it to become the normal. If it becomes the normal, which it's likely to do, you're just going to have number 2 yellow corn and soybeans. But with sustainable practices attached to them that you're not paid for. So if you have something like this, I'm a no-tiller, I'm a low-tiller, I have CSP, I have CRP, whatever practices might be, they count in a scoring system, and you're a 3-star farmer out of 5, or a 5-star farmer out of 5. And Granular can track that, and Agribul can track that, and everybody else can track that, and it can be put on the label easily, produced by a 3-star farmer. Does that solve a problem? And can they be paid for it? Because the point is, can they be paid for it? I mean, they don't want to be, they're commodity farmers. What's the net worth in the room? $1 billion? Do the numbers.
The net
$1 billion
worth?
in the room, right?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of guys that got that.
Yeah, well, way more than $1 billion. But of the farmers, net worth of the farmers in the room, $1 billion, probably. Maybe more than that. But they need to be paid. And before this becomes normal for commodity agriculture, can you track it enough for them to get a premium? Do you want to track it enough for them to get a premium?
The premium is not going to come from the application. What we're sort of
it's going to come from the buyer.
It's going to come from consumers. When I was a kid, you got one thing, and now you can get many things. And the more that the farmer can get informed about what the consumer wants, then the farmer can make the choice, given all of their resources, how they can be most productive to meet that. Right now, you're sort of meeting, call it one standard, all of you, and you're getting in a commodity position. Travis, I think, spending time with Travis, you get a sense. I mean, to think about it, Travis, on the farm, is working directly with Whole Foods to get extra margin. Now, he's taking a lot of effort. He's got to have 11 kids to pull it off. But he's an example.
The real reason why we have 11 kids is the labor. You can't hire good people. You got to breed them.
So I think that we talk about these applications. I don't know if you remember, 99, all of us were excited. We're going to have Walmart.com, and there were all these Pets.com and all these different things. And then finally it sort of settled out. And I would say, from a standpoint, these are all important technologies. We invest in them. But they're going to sort of sort out at some level. And we're going to establish sort of a new kind of standard so that you all can very easily make these decisions and don't have to become an expert on FBN or granular or all those different things. So then the choice, we're going to get to a point where you're going to be able to decommoditize quicker the more we establish the standard about how we're going to do that. So what the hell does that mean? It means, in part, we're sitting here saying, is indigo going to blow up or not? Well, maybe you should all, if indigo wins, then we're going to get more direct connection to consumers, and you're going to be able to decommoditize. So to some degree, and I'm not sure indigo is the one, but to some degree, we're going to have some tribes, in a sense, to sort of pick one path or another path, and there'll maybe be a Whole Foods tribe, and there might be a McDonald's tribe, and there might be an indigo tribe, and you're going to be able to decommoditize in part because you're part of that effort. And that's probably more likely how the world's going to evolve.
Yeah, I would agree. I kind of want to shift gears just 1 second and talk a little about what Travis and I were talking about. I'm having a hard time understanding why we talk about vertical farming, indoor farming. We had guys come to us, Andy and I and a couple other investors wanted us to buy a few buildings and do some indoor farming. Here in Chicago, we're seeing more vacant spaces pop up in some of the cities and some of the buildings as some of the businesses downsize. And the simple play on the indoor, as you guys know, I mean, you go in, we could do items where we would bring in all of our own soil. You'd rent out floors or portions of floors to chefs, local chefs. They would grow their own thing. We would provide the agronomy. We would provide the soil. They would pick and select what they want to grow. That would be one play. Travis and I were talking, and Travis, I think, is moving the ball forward with his 52 Fresh idea, where we believe, there's no reason that you're going to have to truck these types of fruits and vegetables from California all across the country. We think they're going to start to be grown more locally in enclosed environments, and we're curious as to why the farmer isn't more accepting of that and maybe doing that on the farm, because that's what Travis is talking about he's going to do is grow. It's like, why would we, when we know about farming, why would we let other people take that lead away from us? Why are we wanting to drag our feet and just say, no, we don't do that. We don't want to do that. We want to fight that. I think we should be leaders in that space and try and bring that onto our farms. And Travis, tell them a little about how you're doing that or what we're seeing in that.
Yeah, first of all, in this room, I just want to thank you all. You guys feed probably 2/3 of America in this room. And you guys touch at least 2/3 of America and all over the world. That's pretty significant. But there's also a paradigm shift happening, and half you guys are freaking out because you're trying to figure out how to do the same thing that Dad and Granddad did. Well, sometimes you're going to have to do something different, and it's a little bit difficult. And so Carter kind of pushed me on a couple things that made me think and got me fired up, and we were already kind of heading that way. So I grew up in California, kind of like Wyoming in the middle of California, but one of the places that I first worked at was a big sheep ranch, but we also, by accident, I learned citrus. So get into that real quick so you'll understand it. You could have the best citrus in the country out of California, no doubt about it. If you get fruit picked that day, it's probably the best fruit you ever had in your life. 90% of you guys have never even had good fruit. You have no idea. If you're from the further north you go, the more it sucks. Most of you have gotten bananas that are green or black. Avocados that are hard as a rock or mushy. Like you have no idea what really good is. So part of that, from my perspective, we live in North Idaho, and we wanted to figure out how to have something that was actually tasted good all year long. So part of the technologies that are coming that these guys invest in that are working, and what we're working on with 52 Fresh is, I looked at from a consumer perspective what sells, and it could be, it's easy to get interested in something you make like $600 a pound vanilla, or doing something funky, or mushrooms or whatever. But the reality is people eat bananas and oranges and apples. Well, you could be either really good at preserving it, or you can harvest it immediately. It's great to have basil and lettuce. My kids, they'll eat basil inside of pasta, but lettuce, they're only gonna eat half the time. And now my wife's freaking out about lettuce, right? But what it comes back to is we're figuring out, we're still working on it, how to grow bananas in Idaho. Kind of weird, right? But right now they come from Ecuador. Half of them, by the time they get here, going back to sustainability, it's giving back what you've taken. If half of the bananas don't even make it to the store by the time it gets there, is that sustainable? And then you spray it. Time you get it, it either tastes like crap or it's mushy. That's what we're trying to figure out. How do you have precision harvested, spectacular fruit? Everybody's like, oh, what's your next added value product you're gonna make? I've made 500 types of added value products. I just want to grow fruit that tastes good. And 52 weeks of the year, you can alter the sun inside of a building, and you could have the very best tasting berries, bananas, citrus, the normal stuff. The average store goes through 4,000 pounds of bananas a week in this country. And most of them, over half of them, didn't even make it there. By the time you eat it, it's already gone bad. So it's kind of interesting. Why would you think about bananas when we're going to talk about corn and soy? The reality is let's go to avocados for a second. One avocado tree makes more money than your acre of soy, I guarantee. No doubt about it. You could put that inside of a greenhouse on your property, and then you could sell that for way more money. And that's where it becomes kind of interesting. Like, what do you want to teach your kids? How to be really better, more efficient at corn and soy, which there's nothing wrong with that, or do something where they actually make some money. Like, not a little bit of money, but in this room, there's some billionaires. 5% of you are going to change and do something else that you're going to become close to that. Probably 30% of you are going to have to change what you're doing. There's things that are kind of in between. How could you do commodity products, and in the wintertime when you're normally going to Arizona, plant something else your kids can actually be making money selling every week? That's something to think about.
That's just to add to that, and that also aquaculture fits into this picture too.
100%. Yeah.
But the other really important component, I think, of this kind of vertical farming thing, and I entered this ag space. I grew up outside of New York City. Family has land in Iowa, so I understand I understood that ag was a real thing, but I got into the space through the vertical farming kind of aeroponic system building sci-fi realm, right? And that's not gonna displace you, right? No way. It's leafy greens, and we can start to experiment and grow some. It's really hard to produce a lot of the stuff indoors with some of this newfangled technology, but it's really, really important and valuable from the experiential consumer education standpoint, because increasingly we're gonna see grocery stores where that lettuce is growing in the grocery store, and that's why people are gonna show up. And that's not gonna be the real supply. That's the thing that's interesting about it. It's not actually going to be what's really feeding people substantially, but it is gonna be what people are interacting with and what's educating them about where food comes from, which is an improvement from where we're at now. But so again, if you can say, well, here's this demo box growing in my grocery store, I can see the lettuce here, and also in the supply case is all the rest of the stuff that is actually produced 100, 200, 300 miles away that's semi-local, and that's what consumers want. And you can start to say, farming is good, and you can start to tell that story more effectively.
Carter and I sat in on a meeting where it was a presentation for the lighting, and they have lights now that they make claims and data that are as good as the sun, or if not better than the sun.
Better, yeah.
Talks about putting them into indoor spaces, and they're a little pricey at this point, but we believe
everything's expensive at the beginning.
Yeah, with technology changing as rapidly as it is, we believe that pricing probably comes down pretty dramatically in the next several weeks or months. So it's interesting.
He's about to pick up, iPhone, how many generations have we gone through? So we'll be there in indoor farming. So let's take 52 Fresh and imagine that 52 Fresh is available in a lot of places. Everybody now can get great tasting food. 20% of the spend on food will switch to fresh food.
Precision harvested fruit.
And away from what we currently have commodity markets. That's the flip the switch moment. That's when that happens, then it really doesn't matter what the CPGs do marketing wise. If you can get higher quality tasting food, then the people who are suffering diabetes at age 65 because they haven't been able to control their weight because sugar is screwing up their insulin system, is going to flip over to that, and they're going to change their habits because it's the right thing to do, and that will be dramatic. That's when it moves away from yuppie millennials saying, I want to have this cool stuff, to everybody else buying it. And that's, to some degree, that's one of the things we're looking for, is when will that moment occur, and we're investing on that.
Yeah, go ahead, Cargill.
No, I was just building up to the point. Perhaps I have a different perspective about indoor farming because I believe that it has its limitations in terms of the cost and scalability. If you think about coming to the point, right? We have to feed almost 10 billion people in the next years. So that cannot have a lot of containers, also the cost of the energy to produce this, and also the space that you would put that, right? And I don't think that will add, but will not eliminate the function or the value of the agriculture chain. And coming to the point of fresh, I do believe that there are other technologies which are coming out now, which are like special organic coatings that you placing fruits, vegetable that they can spend the freshness and the shelf life for up to 6 months or even more. And this is organic, coming from the silk bug. So I think that I have a little bit more cautious and careful when we say about if indoor farming will completely disrupt the way that we raise and produce. I still see some challenges in that.
Well, part of that deal isn't, so here's the interesting thing. I've analyzed it really heavily. It's not taking a place in Berkeley that used to be a warehouse for something, a button factory or whatever, and then turning that into something that, produces fruit that's like 12 stories high. That's not, if you do the math on that, it doesn't make sense. Because every square inch of that ground is worth about what one of your acres is worth, right? So the reality is you guys are going to be growing that stuff on geothermal ground. It's not up, it's out. You're going to be using their Earth's energy through air tubes, which sounds kind of interesting, but if you're frozen in Nebraska, you can still grow oranges. And that's where it comes back to, you guys have technology and land that's way cheaper than going to New York City. You're still going to ship it some, but there's going to be a point where it's not just growing in the cities and it looks cool and it's fun. Which yes, it will be some of that, but it will be in the middle of the Midwest. You guys are going to be producing grapes and you're going to be producing peaches year round that are better than what you can get from Turkey or from Chile or from California.
So the only thing we're talking about in indoor farm, the two things to make indoor farming work: cost and consumer demand. So those that have had high quality food love it. You put a chart up, your exponential chart. It's an engineering problem at that point. As an engineer, getting costs down is trivial. So does anyone know how much it costs to sequence the genome in 2000? $2.5 billion, one genome. You can now get 23andMe can do a basic genome, not whole genome right now is about 1,000, and when you get 23andMe is cost of goods sold is 90. Once nanopores come online, that cost will go to a penny. Once it's there, we can actually genetically engineer organisms and actually store data in them at a density that nobody's ever seen. And the cost will just continue to go down. And that is the curve we're on indoor farming. I mean, it's an engineering problem. And I've done enough engineering to know that there will be a point, if there's demand, there'll be a point that it will switch. And when it switches, then is he Elon Musk of 52 Fresh? I mean, someone runs around, you can't, Kevin, we talked about this the other day, is Elon Musk in the software business? Is he in the automobile business? I don't know.
Yeah, that's the argument, my Tesla argument. I think everyone looked at Amazon stock. I remember when my buddies first picked up, they lost MCI and they started having to trade Amazon at the CBOE, and they were all upset because we got this crazy stock Amazon that replaced MCI on their exchange board. And everyone looked at Amazon as a bookstore. And I said, you got to be careful here on looking at Tesla as a car company. I mean, I don't, like I said yesterday, GM's trying to get out of the car business. I think Tesla's going to lay inroads, whether it's the gigafactories or whether it's through the batteries and the battery technology. They're going to lay some inroads, and they've gone out and they've learned some things in the process of being first through the door a little bit that, yeah, they've been beat up and banged up and got a big debt load. But I think there's going to be some things spin off of that make them more of an Amazon type of company. That's where you're seeing it's the biggest battleground stock there is right now. But you've got some brilliant people on the short side and some brilliant people that are massively long, and it is just that right there is a battleground stock about technology.
There are two debates here. Let's say Tesla blows up tomorrow, and okay, bad business, not bad idea.
Yeah.
Are we going to stop having autonomous vehicles? No. Okay, so the sacrificial lamb was Tesla.
Pioneers end up with their knives in the back, right? They're the first guys to do it, but then they got a knife in their back. Maybe that's what Tesla is, maybe not. But the next guy is the one that makes all the money.
The next is early bird catches the worm, second mouse gets the cheese. They're just two business models and how things change.
Quite a while ago, you were talking about traceability of meat, and we used to have country of origin labeling, and now we don't. And without getting into the politics of all that, are we going to get there with this traceability back to the farm through a roundabout way?
We will, yeah. They'll force it. Yeah, it'll come back. The reason we did that is because we got in a position where we want to be able to buy it from different countries. I think the biggest one for me, that as an organic beef guy, first guy to organic beef, you go to Costco, they've got organic beef there, you're pretty interested in it, and then the country of origin labeling comes out and it has 4 different countries that same package of beef says it might come from. That's an issue. And it comes back to the consumer. On a commodity level, not as big of a deal. People are going to buy it, and they're like, okay, well, it comes from all those places. But if you look at how much the sales went down after they put that on there, it was pretty interesting. And it's going to come back to people are going to want to know where every single piece of meat comes from. Maybe not ground beef, but every whole muscle piece.
So basically, we're kind of talking about the shift from fast, on-the-go, commercialized food to more healthy, sustainable type food. So what do you think the impact is if we make that shift on the rest of the industry and economy? Because a fast commercialized food supply allows time savings. It allows everyone to have time to go boating, jet skiing, skiing, because you grab the food and go. If we go back to a more fresher, farmer's market food supply or grandma and grandpa style cooking type restaurants, it slows everything down.
So
I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so it's actually opposite. It's a mixture of the healthy, better for you, better tasting, and technology coming together. We have a customer. I think you guys also looked this up in San Francisco that has a robot burger place. They can knock out 700 burgers in an hour with a robot burger. It comes from Country Natural Beef, the same guys that sell to Whole Foods. Their beef does. It grinds it on the fly, slices the cheese, does everything in one machine, and it comes out in minutes for $6. It's the best burger I've eaten, no doubt about it, and it's way better than you can get at any other fast food. They will disrupt that industry once they get it dialed in. Right now, they're only open 3 days a week. You got to be on a list to even go in there. They serve our beverages, but we also have a convenience store to serve our beverages, so it's all over the world. So what's happening is it's a mixture of the technology that's actually doing the high quality stuff, and with their greens are grown in Berkeley. Yeah, they do have that, but they figured out how to make money at it. Pretty interesting. So it's going to be a combination. Being in the food industry, we're getting to a place where the end users are doing a better job with healthier, better for you foods. Then it comes back to the reason why most people eat fast, quick food that isn't as healthy for you is because they don't have access to it. You go to North Dakota and try to get fresh greens, good luck, right? It's not something you're going to see all the time. But it's coming. Like, it's going to be there. Every single town, every one of the little towns you guys live in is going to have fresh stuff that's better than what you get now. And it's done with technology. And eventually, it's going to be a whole lot cheaper to eat than even the food that we have today. And our yields are going to be way better.
Todd, how many more? You want to do one more, 2 more questions?
One more question.
All right, that'll work.
Good morning, Norm Harp here. This may have been an experiment, maybe also there are investors in the room, but I had followed very briefly, again, something a little bit different coming or going to Detroit in terms of plot farming, raising some of the properties that are abandoned, and actually some investment going on, farming, connecting these in an urban area. I'm not sure what that's described of, but there may be investors in the room.
Yeah. So the question is related to, there's an organization, I don't remember it, I interviewed them a long time ago, out of Detroit. So when Detroit lost all its jobs originally, there's a ring road that's 8 miles out. Everything from the center of Detroit all the way to the ring road mostly has been destroyed, and they've been putting orchards and other kinds of local food crops in. Are there investment opportunities in those organizations? And I can't come up with the name of the company at the moment, but there is at least one big one there.
Yeah, I think so. I would call that space urban ag generally. And there, again, it's a really interesting opportunity educationally, connection-wise. It certainly makes it a nicer place to live, to have more green space and there's all sorts of studies on that. But I think that there's certainly an opportunity for what I always talk about, this kind of big ag, urban ag divide. And personally, I like both, but it's really frustrating because there's a huge disconnect. And a lot of the folks on the really urban ag side of things are somewhat misinformed and tend to be very, very far on the anti-GMO whatnot spectrum, right? But there's certainly an opportunity for us to be connecting with those folks because we all, at the end of the day, want the same thing, which is to be able to feed people and everyone make money off of it, right? So there's an opportunity. It's very difficult to effectively invest, I think, in a lot of those in a non-philanthropic way right now. But there's definitely an opportunity to work with them to improve kind of the chain between consumer and actual producer.
There's also a little bit of a BS factor in that too.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of interesting. I was at a big food show a couple weeks ago, and there were people talking, and they were kind of pitching like we only buy from the farmer. And at the end of the day, at the end of the meeting, he kind of came green on us. He was greenwashing. He was basically saying, well, we do this stuff, but really we just buy it from the distributor like everybody else does. And so we in 2004, we were selling Kuru Buddha style Berkshire pork, and it was like the fatty, juicy, spectacular stuff, and we were charging $6 a pound. Then I went into the same restaurant that's serving our stuff, and my wife's like, this stuff tastes like crap. Like it was the hard muscled, heavy muscle, hard gene pork that they were buying. Well, they were pitching it as ours, but they're actually selling the other stuff. It was BS. If you go to, I would say 99% of the stores in the restaurant industry, in the big cities, there's a lot of BS. Like honestly, they do. It's bait and switch. Like, oh, come in, we have this amazing product. Unless you can taste the difference, it's probably not real. That's where it comes back to the blockchain. Like, they're gonna get deeper and thicker because now if somebody goes in the back room and sees it, they're gonna take a picture of it and they're gonna be like, I call BS. And so there's a balance of how do we truly have a better quality product mixed with making it so that they're not lying. Like our products, we developed our tractor beverage products so that it's in a way that you can't put it in the same machine as a Coke or Pepsi product because we don't want somebody else to put their stuff in our machine. It's a totally different ballgame. And there's going to be that. And so going back to the investment of, I think it's pretty and it's fun to have stuff in the city. At some point, the amount of volume that they do, they have to buy something in. And if they're not buying it in from an infrastructure perspective from the same kind of people, it's not really the same thing. And eventually it becomes something different. And that's the unfortunate part of that whole business model.
Yeah, I think that is good. I think, anyone got closing comments? We want to start at the end and kind of wrap things up. And I think then we're going to take, people can get a quick break, quick drink. Todd is going to, what are you going to
I'm going to borrow the stage for just a bit to
do
a radio program I call Commodity Week. So Matt Bennett was here. You saw him yesterday. He'll be up front. Chip Nellinger, Mike Mock, Kevin, I take it you'll join us. And the CEO from Bunge is going to join us as well for a discussion. We'll talk about half an hour. And Commodity Week is corn and soybeans and just simply marketing. So we'll take that while you're on break. So if you want to stay here, that's fine. Go on break and see the vendors. Make sure you see the vendors. Please make sure you see the vendors too. So thank you very much. Your final words, everybody got anything they want to wrap up, or are we all done?
I think, I don't know how you all interpret this as to whether it feels doom and gloom or not. I think that as investors, as we invest in technology, what we're trying to do is make it, to decommoditize it to help improve your margins and to address consumer needs. Everything else in between is going to sort of shuffle around, and that might be where more of the disruption. So if any of your, we'd love to hear from you. I love Travis in terms of what he's teaching us. We learn a lot from your feedback. A lot of my team's around here, but thank you very much for listening.
Appreciate it, Doug. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be here, and excited for all of you. I think in the future, your kids are probably going to make more money than you do in agriculture, but they're going to have to change some, and it's going to be a lot of fun watching it.
Yeah, also, thank you all. I would echo kind of the sentiment that we need all of you, and this, to me, ag tech is the most exciting place in the world to be working right now because there's a lot of problems and opportunities to get solved, and that extends globally, and it's super exciting, and I'm happy to talk all times of the day with everyone about it.
Wait, 10. Oh, 10. Yeah. So you need 10:30.
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. I think for most of the people that are attending this conference, I think you'd be characterized as being progressive, being on the bleeding edge. And so the folks outside of this room, the farmers, reminding them to have an open mind that there are technologies available to them, and we just need to look. So thank you for listening to us.
Yeah, same thing. Thanks for having me. I mean, interesting panel. I think, most of the discussion that I heard comes down to marketing. Almost everything we talked about was marketing. Almost none of it was technology. Technology has a role in it. I think it's up to us to figure out, where we play on both sides of that. Your your non-GMO cranberry is a great example, right? Why does that have a huge spike in consumer? Because they've been marketed to think that's all it is. That label means nothing to them essentially, other than, oh, this must be better, right? And so that's where we have failed as an industry from a marketing perspective. When we talk about traceability, sustainability, whatever label shows up, that's marketing, right? That's a completely different definition than what it means to a lot of the folks in this room, because as a grower, when I think about sustainability, I'm thinking about efficiency, right? I'm thinking about, am I flushing half of my fertility program out into the Gulf of Mexico every year, right? That's a sustainability problem that if I fix it, I become much more efficient in terms of, my production. We're looking at a world where there's going to be another 2 billion people on the planet. You're talking about a world where globally, everyone's incomes and level of living is going to raise. You're going to see changes in diet from plant to more animal protein. So that, it's been neat to listen to, but corn and soy is not going away. There's the demand for that's never going away. We can do a lot to be more efficient. We can do a lot to be more productive on the land that we have. And that's where these technologies really shine. It's about productivity. It's about optimizing supply chain, optimizing the way we implement hardware. Labor costs is a big one unless you have 11 kids. And so it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see where the world goes in the next few years.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more with you. And I like to always say that I think like we passed in this industry in the 50s with the green revolution, where we have all the technology around the seeds, genetic coming to the place, I think we are passing through a very similar process right now, but in the technology space, as you said, right, which will not only allow you to produce better, have more efficiency, but also have a better sounded and better marketing, right? I think that in this both sides you will have more advantage and better experience through considering technology in your life, and that's where I think all the players in the industry are starting to be careful with that and hearing your concerns, hearing your thoughts and your pain points so we can build products and services that serves you better. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. If people haven't heard, my son Jordan's doing a new thing for us on Farm Tank with the podcast. And you guys can hear some interesting stories. I know Mark shared some very interesting story, travels and trips through the Himalayas and different things, and hunting adventures he's been on, crazy hunting adventures. Carter's got some unique stories on sailing, and Carter, used to build the bombs for Boeing and has some interesting, stories and things that he shares on Farm Tank. Travis has been on there as well, and I'm sure Jordan will interview some of the others, but just some amazing stories about them as people and how they're changing and what they've done in the past and some of the really neat things that have happened in their lives. So, and we'll try and share more of that with people. We're trying to, Barrett with Organics has been on just to tell a little bit more about people and themselves and where they came from and what have made them who they are and the leaders that they've become. So I think it's interesting to hear the facts and things, but I also think it's nice to hear more about the people and what made them special and have made them that way. So I appreciate all you guys for your time with Jordan on that as he's learning and trying to get better. And thank you guys for being here today. Appreciate it.